And Carla, you're good to go.
Hello and welcome back to The Grill Day 2. I'm Carla Renata, a film critic and producer and host of The Curvy Film Critic with Carla Renata. I am so excited to be kicking off our Building Inclusion from Within roundtables. The fight for racial justice isn't just a moment, y'all. It is a movement. And during this first roundtable that we're doing, I'll be speaking with a group of powerhouse women from various lanes of the industry who are disrupting change and promoting equality in their own way. So let's bring them out. First up on the docket is Erin Donahue. She is the youngest of 7 children born to a Vietnamese mother. We were talking about that food before, so we might have to interject some of that into the conversation. And an American naval officer father. She's currently developing original movie projects with Freeform and Lifetime while developing her spec feature Time Out with Lucy Liu, who is attached to direct. Welcome, Erin.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Next up is Smriti Mundra. Hey, Smriti.
Hey, Carla.
So Smriti, y'all, is an Oscar-nominated director, producer of a documentary called St. Louis Superman, with the 2 words being from my hometown. Yes, I saw this film and it was absolutely fantabulous, and it was nominated for a 2020 Academy Award. Most recently, Smriti is the creator and EP of the hit Netflix series Indian Matchmaking. Sorry, Mitchmaking. What am I doing? My mouth's not working right. She's also written, directed, and produced both short and long form documentary content for BET. Welcome, Smriti. Paige Hurwitz. You're welcome. Paige.
Hi.
Hey. Hey, darling. Paige Hurwitz is responsible, y'all, for discovering and launching the careers. Are you ready? Let me crack my neck real quick. Of comedians that include Amy Schumer and Tiffany Haddish. In 2013, Paige and Wanda Sykes, another powerhouse in the comedy arena, co-founded Push It Productions to promote diversity on and off the screen. Their most recent projects include Netflix's Tiffany Haddish Black Mitzvah, which was nominated for an Emmy. Tiffany Haddish Presents They Ready, and Paige is that EP of those projects. Welcome, Paige.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Next up is my girl, Olivia Morris. Hey, Olivia.
Hello.
Olivia began her career as a development executive of original scripted programming at TBS. She was also senior director of development and production at Kerry Washington's production company, Simpson Street. But as of August of this year, 2020, Olivia left Simpson Street to create and become the founder and CEO of Black Monarch Entertainment, a full-service broadcasting and media production company. Welcome, Olivia.
Thank you for having me.
Nika King.
Yay.
Hey.
Yay. Hi.
Nika, hey, girl, hey. Nika, y'all, is a stand-up comedian, actress, writer, and founder of Jelly Technologies. Ooh, she got a lot going on. She most recently starred as Rue's, Zendaya's mama, Leslie, in the HBO series Euphoria, and Zendaya made history, y'all, with that Emmy win. And I was her first mama, Nika's her last mama, so there's that. Her additional credits include MTV's Wild and Out, CBS's Two Broke Girls, owns Greenleaf. You were fantabulous on that, by the way. Netflix's Kevin Hart's Guide to Black History Month, and much more. Welcome, Nika.
Thank you for having me.
And last but definitely not least is Mikan Shelton. Mikan is the Senior VP for Enterprise Inclusion, for WarnerMedia, where she is responsible for leading workforce and production safety initiatives. In her role there, Mikan is focused on creating consistent measurements, practices, and systems as it relates to increasing the advancement of underrepresented groups. Welcome, everybody. I love having all these powerful ladies here on the screen. It's great. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I love all of that. So let me pull up what we're going to talk about today. Now, so there's been a lot of conversations that have begun in Hollywood, and Hollywood is starting to finally, discuss the work required that we need to increase representation in front of and behind the camera in the entertainment field, and how it translates that content rather into a broader audience. But what's next? So this roundtable discussion is going to focus on inclusion, work happening, impactful, conscious content, and actionable steps required to maintain momentum in the effort to sustainably increasing representation and elevate diverse voices in Hollywood. During this discussion, y'all, we hope to address the ways in which Hollywood can help underrepresented professionals access the Hollywood pipeline and prepare for leadership positions while creating safe spaces for stories and representation on screen that shift global culture for good. So, is starting out that conversation, let's talk a little bit about one of the oldest subjects on the docket, the inclusion rider. So I remember, I'm sure y'all remember too, the inclusion rider, when people were getting up during their award speeches talking about they were going to have inclusion riders as part of their deals. And so for those of you that are watching that don't necessarily know what that is, let me break it down for you real quick. An inclusion rider or an equity rider is a provision in an actor's or filmmaker's contract that provides for a certain level of diversity in casting and production staff. For example, the rider might include a certain proportion actors or staff to be women, people of color, LGBT, people with disabilities, so on and so forth. So let's start with Mikan and talk about, you know, how WarnerMedia is attempting to do that at this day and age with all these discussions going on.
Sure. So we have been very out front in this and embracing the inclusion rider. But what we are also trying to do is accept that onus is on us and not wait for an actor or anybody else to come and use that pressure point on us, right? I think the key for us is to understand it as a competitive advantage and as an aspiration that is going to help our business, not as a reactive measure because somebody's demanding it in their contract, but because we know we need to have a diverse audience, or that we need to have diverse stories to reach a diverse audience. And so it's a very different way for us to be looking at it. And it's not, you know, compliant or defensive, but really leaning into the, you know, global marketplace, leaning into the diversity of the audiences that is only increasing in diversity in America. And certainly to go global, you need to have a multiplicity of voices. So we're really talking about it as a business advantage and as a creative advantage and as a draw to talent, because we think that the more inclusive we are, the more we can attract the most original and brilliant storytellers and creators around the world.
Thank you for that. And let me just say, my tagline to the Curvy Critic is shooting straight from the hip. So I'm just going to call a spade a spade. I love the fact that when someone was brought to the forefront for this discussion to talk about inclusion and diversity, it wasn't a middle-aged white man, because I'm about tired of seeing that. I'm so glad that there's a woman of color that's talking about that this time. So thank you, Mikan. I'm so excited about that. Just that alone. Just that alone. I'm just saying, snap, snap, snaps for you. Now, on a completely different spectrum, I want to talk to Paige about that, because I know a lot of stand-up comedians. A plethora of them are some of my best and brightest friends. But I know for stand-up comedians and for comedians in that lane, in terms of inclusion writers and inclusion and diversity, it's always been a hard way to go. And I just want to know if this has impacted that industry at all.
I think it's getting better. You know, I'll say, you know, also not, I'll say, as I started my career as a stand-up. So I remember very well, all too well, how difficult it was just to get stage time if you're a woman, and especially if you are a woman of color. You know, the white straight dudes, the club should have just been called White Straight Dudes. That's all it was. It was like, it was just a sea of plaid shirts and bad jokes. So, you know, it starts all the way down there. But I think, you know, over time, I think that diverse voices have demanded the spotlight and have commanded the stage, and so that they are undeniable. And so you see now, even at those lower levels, the clubs are getting more diverse. You see more people of color on lineups. You see more women on lineups. That's not to say that it's everything's 100% terrific. It's not. We still have a lot of work to do. But I think having people in positions of power, I'll just say, like when I was show running Last Comic Standing, I made a point of taking over all of the comedian casting myself. And so I used to audition 2,500 comedians every year. And as a result of that, we then had a far more diverse cast of comedians on the show. And I think as you see more and more people of color, more and more women, more and more gay and lesbian and trans folks in producing positions and in positions of power in the comedy world, it's that you'll see more and more diversity. I think it definitely makes a difference to have people in positions of power who are making the decisions who look like America. And as that changes, the rest of it follows. I hate to say it's trickle down because, that's a horrible illusion. But who does the hiring matters.
Absolutely.
And I will say, just to add to your previous question, when I'm staffing a show, I'm always incredulous when I hear how people are saying, I just can't find any Black people to put on this show, or I can't find any Asian people or gay people. I'm like, you have to work really hard not to have a diverse staff.
That part.
Right? So if you don't have, and my partner Wanda says this on stage, if you don't have a Black friend at this point, you're the problem. So if you can't find people to be on your staff that don't look like you, you're the problem. Fix it. It's not that hard. Call a friend. Ask somebody.
Phone a friend. Use that lifeline. Phone a friend.
But
absolutely.
It is getting better, and as more and more people, more and more diverse voices are emerging in positions of power, it is changing, and that is exciting.
I want to speak to that because all of you are EPs or CEOs or creators of projects, and every year we have that USC Annenberg study that comes out, and it came out again this year, not too long ago. I think maybe about 13 days ago, the new one came out, and it gave some percentages, and I just want to run them down to y'all and have a little discussion. They said that women behind the camera, that 10.7% were directors, 19.4 were writers, 24.3 were producers, and 5.2 were composers. All of the rest of that percentage were men. And I just want to get your thoughts about the USC Annenberg study that comes out that does break down these percentages and how you feel like the industry needs to take a needle and move it a little step further. Let's start with Smirty on that one. Unmute yourself. There you go.
There we go. Yeah, I got it. I mean, in terms of a study like that, it's, it's deflating, it's distressing, but it's about as surprising as a sunny day in Los Angeles. We all know that. We all work in media. We all know the reasons why those numbers are the way they are, and we know what needs to be done for that to change. I think personally, I'm not so content anymore to wait for the powers that be to push for that change. I feel like it's going to be on us, to do that, to work together, to collaborate, to hire each other, and then bring up, the next generation or the next, group of people up with us. And that's sort of what I'm focusing my energy on. Can't wait for white men to give me the chance anymore.
Yeah, we can. Erin, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, as a writer, definitely it's very frustrating to see in the media, like when they're announcing all of these projects, that there might be more focus on like female stories, but then they're always hiring white guys to write them, or like people of color. Like, so it's like, oh, this book, and even like the book was written by a woman, and maybe it's even produced by a woman, but the director and the writer are both men. You know, it's starring this woman, it's starring that woman, or even if it's not just female stories, but like people of color, and they're still hiring white directors and white writers outside of the cultures they're representing, outside of the, and I'm not saying, like, and as a writer, I do want to be allowed to write stories that are outside of my own experience, because like otherwise I would just be writing monologues.
Right.
You know, so like as a creative, I mean, well, like, yeah, because there's a balance between, you know, I want representation, but then like also it gets so narrowed down. So like, am I allowed to write about any Asian population that is not Vietnamese? Am I allowed to write, but, you know, those types of stories? But at the same time, it's like, at least give us a chance to even out the field in general, because they're not hiring women to write female-led stories, and they're still not hiring people of color to write the stories from within their own communities. So we should, at the very least, be allowed to tell our own stories. And so it's frustrating.
Yeah, it is very frustrating. Absolutely. It's frustrating to watch it too. It's frustrating, like you said, to watch a program that is centered around women, regardless of what lane of ethnicity they come in. And then you see the credits roll and it was written by some Jewish white dude. I'm like, I'm a need for that.
And
not to happen no more.
There's so many cases of that where like I'll be going up for a job, or I remember for years, like going up for staffing and being like, oh, they already have their woman in the room. You know, like that's their level of diversity. Or even after Crazy Rich Asians came out and it was awesome. It was like, oh my God, suddenly people are interested in Asian stories. But it was like, you know, you're pitching a show and it's like, oh, well, we've already bought our Asian show. So like they do the one step, they do just enough of like the performative allyship to show that they are like being diverse, but it doesn't change, you know, the people, like you said, the people who are hiring, the people who are buying are still the majority white men. So they'll let like one person in and then they'll quickly slam the door and then that's it. They're like, oh, like pat themselves on the back and they're like, we're good.
That's so disheartening. And I want to flip this over to Olivia and Nika too, because Olivia was working at one of the few production companies that is run by a woman of color, you know, Simpson Street with Kerry Washington. And now she has her own entertainment company, Black Monarch. And I just want you to speak to that for a second, and we'll flip over to Nika to talk about it, if you don't mind, Olivia.
Yeah, no, I'd love to. You know, before I say anything about what I've been working on, I think it's kind of impossible to take the conversation away from what's just happening in the real world ever. You know, today we got the news about Breonna Taylor having no justice, right? And as my personal internal revolution has been bubbling up my entire life, I got to the point where I was like, no justice, no peace, period. I've always wanted to work in a space that was combining art with activism. And so I actually worked with Tiffany Haddish as well when I was working on The Last OG at TBS. And that was such a powerful show to work on because, you know, it wasn't just a funny show like a lot of other shows we were working on. We were able to talk about recidivism, gentrification. You know, Tiffany's character was such a beautiful character to help shape because, you know, she wasn't just a Black woman from the streets who had a hard life. And, you know, you see her mom on coke and all of these stereotypes. You know, you see her in the present day and she is formidable. She is solid. She has a beautiful family. And those are, it's really, really aspirational on top of it. And so in coming over to work with Kerry, that was an exciting opportunity to leave the buying side to go to the selling side. And, you know, we talk about buyers who are a lot of white men. It's tricky, that decision to leave the buying side, because I was in a position of power my entire career before this moment. And so moving over to work with Kerry, one was very, very exciting because she's a woman in this business who is not only a laser focused activist and artist and, you know, director and all of these roles that she has. She is a producer that has a very singular vision. And she was like, otherness keeps me up at night. And I said, same. Me too. And so in starting my own company, for me, it's been I want every single project to be nutrient rich. I want it to be dense. I want it to be overly saturated. I don't want it to be watered down at all. And so as we talk about inclusion, I think it's nice that so many organizations this year have really started putting forth their D&I strategies and explaining to executives what equity means and how it's not the same as equality. And we're having all these conversations. But for me, queer Black woman, these are always been the conversations. You know what I mean? So I'm excited to, not just have TV projects or film projects or podcasts or unscripted, but to really be able to, every time I pull up my seat in front of any other seat, that these conversations are going to be transparent. I'll just show you, I have my RBG pin on today. May she rest in peace. And my shirt today says, here's my Black ass tea about being Black and loving being Black in Queens and shit. Oh, and melanin. Like, that's how I walk in. That's how we pull up. Period.
You like, that's how I'm rolling.
You said we're shooting from the hip, Carla. I was like, that's it. I, this is a shirt that I've had for many years. I think I wore it to TBS once, and someone said, "What's melanin?" And I was like, "Oh, I gotta."
No, stop it. Somebody did not ask you what melanin was.
Yeah, we Black Panther hadn't come out yet. You know what I'm saying? I don't know.
Nika, speak to it, because you write as well and you produce, and you have a whole nother set off with the whole technological side, which we never see a lot of women in, and if they're there, they're not given their props. So can you just speak to all of that for a second?
Okay. Kudos to you, Olivia.
She took her jacket out. She's
Wear
like,
your
"Look,
shirt,
I
girl.
won't focus."
In case you missed it.
She was like, "Let me just roll."
My mom, I love it. I had my hair up. My mom was like, "Oh, you gonna wear your afro?" I'm like, "Yes, I need to represent. I need to feel like I'm, putting forth my best afro-ness, But like you said, Carla, I'm an actress, and for me, it's always been about—
Yes, ma'am.
Kind of. Can you hear me? Okay. It's always been about kind of being generous with my network, because coming into the industry, I did not have a mentor. I wanted one. I begged people to be my mentor. I stalked people. I had coffee dates, before social media happened, and it was always kind of like, Erin said, it was like the closed door, like the one person is in and they're not actually kind of opening that door for you to come in. And so
that
for me, it's all
mentality.
About, yes. And that scarcity mentality, especially with people of color, because, you have your one, right? You have your one hot comedian that's doing great things. You have your one dramatic actor. You have your one this or your one that. And so for me, I created Jelly because I wanted people to have a platform to kind of come into the industry, build community, build inclusion, and kind of navigate through the entertainment world by connecting with professionals such as themselves, so they can kind of create their own personal roadmap to success. Because technology is everything right now. We're on technology. We have our phones 28 hours a day. And for me, the world is changing with COVID, and we still need to make sure that the next generation has access and resources to come in and kind of get their dreams fulfilled, whether that's in front of the camera, whether that's behind the camera, all the way from development to distribution. So for me, it was important to create something like that so we can keep that discussion going and kind of keep that work moving.
Cool. And you're rocking the whole Africanness thing with the fro and the earrings and the top. I'm feeling it. Go ahead with your bad stuff. Go ahead. You know what I did? Yes, of course. Please jump in.
With what you were talking about with comedy. One thing, and Nika, I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are about this, because I've known Nika a long time. And I when I first saw Nika, she was in an improv sketch comedy troupe, and she was like the star. Like, she was hilariously funny, undeniably talented, so great. And so she's been through the ringer with Hollywood, I know. But I think with comedy, what's interesting is that you were saying this, Nika, you have your one that breaks through. right? And then what I find is that then everyone wants more of that person. So then there are these archetypes that we have to adhere to. So if let's say Tiffany is the most, successful Black female comedian at the moment, then as we cast for other projects, every Black female comedian we look at that the network wants to see and will approve has to be as close to Tiffany as possible. Like there's no room for different voices among Black female comedians. It's like you either have to be this archetype or that one, and that's it. Right. And I wonder if you have found that, because I don't think that you're someone who's easily pigeonholed, but I wonder if you come up against that.
Oh, yes, definitely. Of course. It's like Olivia said, it's like playing to the stereotypes and perpetuating those same stereotypes. And I'm not saying Tiffany is, I'm just saying they want to make sure that they have this one archetype or this one style of comedy or kind of loud and boisterous, because as we know, Black people are not monolithic. You have a whole spectrum of personalities. And I think people want to see that. They want to see Black and brown people be represented in a way that represents that. I'm sorry, I said represented twice, huh?
It's all good, girl.
I promise you, I got an SAT vocabulary. I promise you, I got a 1040 of my vocabulary. I got a 1040, girl, and I was struggling then. But you kind of want to see that spectrum. You want to see the dry humor. You want to see the sarcastic humor. So I think Hollywood needs to be open to that and understand who their audiences are and appeal to not just one kind. And yes, I have been in that situation, but as you know, Paige, comedy is all about evolution. I mean, the jokes I was telling 10 years ago, if I told y'all that, y'all would be like, oh girl, you need to go back home, start over again. Because that is not funny. But as you go through life, you experience things, your palate changes and you become more aware of just how you want to be represented in the world. And so, yeah, I've had that happen, but I don't put myself in a box at all.
Olivia, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I do want to say too, going back to something that Irene said earlier today. We talk a lot about the Black versus white conversation, at least I do in my circles. And it's a tale as old as time in terms of the historical context of our country and of media. But when we talk about inclusion, to me, it's like I want every single voice to be pulling up to the table and have the opportunity. And so, the moment that we had with Black Panther was massive. And we get to talk about the diaspora and Wakanda and everything. But it's also, it's having that Crazy Rich Asian moment for every other community too. And not just that being the only representation either. Like we saw that with Parasite and how voracious we were for it, right? So, that's something that I'm also interested in too, and bringing into the conversation is, it's different abilities, it's race, it's gender, it's ethnicity, it's body types. It's like, it's not just the Black versus white conversation, even though that's, where I like to live.
I'm glad you said that, because I was going to actually say that we do a lot of times when we're talking about inclusion and diversity and what that looks like, it usually always is a conversation of Black versus white. We forget that there's Asian and there's different this is the other thing too. People forget there's different types of Asians, there's different types of Latinas, there's different types of Indian, there's different types of every ethnicity that exists. It's not, as Nika said, it's not monolithic. It's not just one thing. We're all not just one type of person. And I find that in Hollywood sometimes, to speak to what Paige said, what oftentimes happens is they get that one, whoever that breakout person is, they get that one and they do cookie cardboard cutout for everybody else in that ethnicity lane. Like when Mindy came on with the Mindy Project, all of a sudden they wanted, funny Indian women that looked like Mindy. When Crazy Rich Asians came out, they wanted somebody that was like the characters or the actors in Crazy Rich Asians all the way down the spectrum. I wish that some of these executives at these studios and these production companies, I wish, no shade, my girl, Mikan.
I know, I feel like I'm going to jump in here.
I wish that people would just look outside the box for 2 seconds and realize that nobody is, even white people are not monolithic. There's European white, there's American white. You know what I mean? Everybody is different. Everybody is from a melting pot of someplace else. So I really wish that was more of the conversation. And Olivia, you were so right with the nail on the head about we do oftentimes, and I think it's a force of habit. When we have those discussions, it's always black and white, black and white, black and white, but that's not all there is. So
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
So, it's really important, I think, that Olivia brought up the moment we're in, because at WarnerMedia, and as I'm thinking about the strategy that my boss, Christy Halbegger, who's the Chief Enterprise Inclusion Officer, has really built out our department so that I oversee workforce and production. And I have a brilliant counterpart who oversees the content and storytelling narrative. And then I have another counterpart who works on pipeline programs. And we've come together and we've really leaned into this moment that is about black and white relations, and that is about what is happening in the racial justice and social justice movement right now, because it has put such a bright spotlight on how uncomfortable people are still talking about race and talking about black-white race relations. And I don't think we're ready to, I don't think we should move off of that yet. I think that this is a moment for us to really lean into that discomfort, so that if we can get comfortable talking about what is historically the most difficult thing for us to talk about in America, that then the rest, right, we will be building the muscle to examine our own blind spots and our biases, and we'll be building the muscle to talk across difference, whether it's, a Vietnamese refugee versus, understanding that that's actually different than being Korean or Japanese, or that experience is different, right? I mean, actually being able to take this time and have this collective experience where we can all be understanding about equity. I mean, we just saw in such stark display what racial inequity looks like, right? So it left no more to the imagination. Like, we did not need to wonder, like, how does that play out, right? I mean, we saw it. And so I'm not ready. And our company right now is really focused on the issue of black and white race. And we're talking about white supremacy culture, and we're talking about dominant culture, not to exclude any other dimension of identity, but because it is one that I think people skirt through or like run past. They're so eager to get out of that conversation that, we want people to actually sit in the space. Like, let's actually understand better before we go off and act and, do all sorts of things and open up the conversation and and get lose focus, right? We're like, let's actually feel uncomfortable together, and let's not even kid ourselves that we're ready to move off of this topic. So we're still in that conversation, and to my mind, we need to be there for a while. And then, of course, we're going to bring it to Asians. We'll bring it to lots of other dimensions, but that's our approach right now. Really, really leaning into that.
I wanted to
Irene, you're going to say something?
make just one thing about to go back to the whole not being able to step outside the box, and you get the one, that one person, that one successful thing, or archetype, and how white people are not monolithic either, but they are allowed to be they're allowed to be different things, is what I want to say. Whereas people of color or women, you are so often put into, like you said, this box, and that's all that's allowed to be represented. Whereas, and also the way that you have to be successful. If you fail, if you are the one person and you fail, that's it. So if Crazy Rich Asians had failed, we're not making another, big Asian cast movie because it failed. Whereas if a Mark Wahlberg movie fails, it's not like they're going to stop making white guy with a gun movies. They're still going to make a million other white guy with a gun movies. But I remember when I first came out here, Bridesmaids had just opened, and thank God it did well, because I wrote R-rated female comedy, and suddenly it was I can stay, like I can have a career. But if it had failed, that would have been the end of it. Like we have, for women and for people of color, you have this burden of responsibility of success and of representation. And so like they always want, like with the tokenism, it's something that as a writer, I always have to be conscious of, because and that I want to change is the idea that like it has to be about your identity, about your racial identity, about being, it's, you know, if I'm writing a story, they want it to be like about being Asian. And I'm like, I want to normalize being like, we're just people like this. If a Black writer just wants to write their experience, or a queer writer or something, it's like, oh no, it has to be about like you being queer, or you being Black, or you being Asian. And it's like, but that's not what drives every single moment of my existence. There are other parts of my identity. And so, for example, like a movie like Always Be My Maybe with on Netflix, you know, it was just a rom-com. And it was just like, and they were Asian, and there were like bits in there that like sort of made it organic and made it authentic, but it wasn't about them being Asian. And then because everyone was Asian, you got to have multiple different types of Asian people. You got the Asian hippie, you got like, you know, the strict parents, you got the chill parents, you got the weed smoker, you got like, whereas normally you get one Asian person, so that Asian person has to like represent every single thing. And so then the Asians get mad because they're like, that's not how I am. And it's like, but there was only one. We can't include like every aspect of that identity. So in terms of inclusion and representation, I think that is something from the storyteller perspective that I have a hard time with, because from the executive perspective or the network or studio, they're always sort of pushing that level a lot of the times of like trying to make it more like what they see, because they come at it from mostly a white perspective. They're like, oh, we need to get more of these things in. And I'm like, okay. But it's finding that balance. And luckily I've been able to find that balance with a couple of and I feel like it's changed recently. The dialogue has changed. And so people on the other end that I've worked with, at least recently, have been more willing to be like, well, okay, like what is your perspective? Or when I push back, they're more likely to be open to what I'm saying, as opposed to in the past, it's been very like, oh, no, we can't, no, let's no. Can we just like take it down a little bit, you know? So I just wanted to bring that up and see how other people feel about that.
Hey, you were going to say something?
I love what you said about being able to fail, because that's something in stand-up and in comedy that's always a problem, because if you start at the lowest levels, and if only one woman gets on a show at a comedy club and she has to be perfect, if she bombs, good luck getting another set. Whereas the guys can bomb, and isn't that hilarious? And they can joke with each other. And guess what? They're all going to be back the next night and the next night and the next night. And that woman will disappear because she didn't have a killer set. She may have had better sets than those guys did, but it's still not good enough. It was a failure. And God forbid she bombs. And so I always think, like, how many people have we been robbed of? Like, how many incredibly talented people and powerful voices have we been robbed of culturally because we haven't allowed for failure? And then that goes all the way up. Like, which shows get greenlighted? Whose sitcom gets an order with maybe a writer who doesn't have 20 years of show running experience under their belt? Is that show less likely to get greenlit? Probably. And so what have we been robbed of? And I think it makes the culture poorer, because we don't allow failure in equal measure. And failure is typically the privilege, not to sound like a broken record, but typically the privilege of straight white men. And so much so that they don't even realize it. They laugh off their failures. We we go into a shame spiral. There's usually ice cream involved, but how many careers have been ended because we allowed for failure?
Yeah.
So
I think it's those types of conversations. And Carla, you asked about the USC statistics and the data. And I think it's so important for us to keep looking at that and keep really holding, everybody in the industry accountable and really using that to question whether or not we understand how we're getting to those numbers, like really examining all parts of the industry to see what is the system in play in the whole industry, the whole ecosystem, and really examine that really, really critically. I think that's really important in the whole spectrum, the whole range of the industry.
We got just a few minutes left, ladies. Go ahead, Olivia, say what you got to say.
I was going to say, in addition to the Annenberg study, the UCLA Race in the Writers' Room report also comes out every year. And that's another way to holistically look at what's going on, not just from a top level view, but, from the showrunners to the writers. And also Color of Change has a lot of statistics that come out regularly. That's what I've been heartened to see as well, as how many organizations have consistently been on top of it, but this year exploded with information, which is really exciting.
We have to do a part 2 of this because, oh my God.
I know. This is awesome. I mean, the reason I'm here is because like an initiative my homeboy started, Create the Writers' Room. Like Olivia said, these programs that are in place, they can't be a one-off. It can't just be one thing and then that's it. We have to constantly like work towards dismantling this system, because just like every other industry, systemic racism is there. And until we tackle that foundation, then everything that comes after it is not going to work. So we have to start with the foundation, and why these numbers every year, they only like literally go up just like a milli percentage, because there's no real change, because there's only one-offs, or, okay, we did a diversity showcase. Okay, but every other meeting that I'm having with producers and casting, I'm not being cast. I'm not, my talent isn't being invested in, and people are just saying, oh, you did the showcase, that was cool. But I don't have a show. People are not calling me and saying, hey, how can we elevate your talent? Do you have any ideas? Like, I know you do stand-up. Do you want to do a show? So we have to make sure we're doing that work and do it in a way where it's real inclusion, like not some fake inclusion, not the illusion of inclusion. It's real inclusion, So like panels like this is awesome because we're keeping the conversation going.
It's great, but the conversation is people like us, though. That's the issue, is that like the people watching this and us having the conversation are people who are, it's like preaching to the choir sometimes. So like in order for there to be real change, it has to be at the studio level, at the buyer level, at the power levels, because they're the ones making the decisions. And like like you said, like they'll do the one thing, but how do we get? And so, that whole thing where it's like, oh, I can't find, writers, or I can't find actors, I can't find producers of color. It's like, or like, how do we fix this problem? It's like, hire us. That's it. That's all. Like, that's it. That is the answer. The answer is hire, not just look for them, not just talk about them, not host these panels and diversity. Like, it's hire, it's numbers, it's money. It's like, get us paid, hire the people, get our stories out there. The audience wants it. I know it's all about money. So like, I feel like it's been proven enough that diverse projects are successful. So just do more.
I think that's a great note to end this on, because we got 2 minutes and I got to wrap it up. I'm so sorry, you guys. I'm so sorry. We have to do a part 2. We have to do a part 2. I got 1 minute left. If you can get it in 30 seconds, Paige, I'll let you go ahead and talk.
Okay, just one thing that I think is really important with these conversations that we kind of always never get to is, why is inclusion important? And here's my thought on that. For people, the broader public, here's why. You're going to have better television. You're going to have better entertainment, because you're opening up the pool to the talented people and a broader range of the most talented people. Number 2, it's profitable. It's not mutually exclusive. You can make money because you've got a bigger audience and people who are clamoring to see themselves represented on television. And number 3, because there is a social responsibility that we all have in recognizing that television is one of the most powerful forces on earth. And if you don't believe that, look at who's in the White House. So we have a responsibility, to make sure television is an agent of change for the better and not a weapon against the people.
That's a
And
whole nother conversation.
vote.
And vote. Ladies, we have to do a round 2 of this because we all have so much to say and we just have too little time. But I want to thank every last single one of you. Y'all are badass women. I don't know if I can curse or not, but I'm cussing. Y'all are some badass women. And I'm so honored and grateful and excited to have been able to spend this time with you. So thank you so much. Smirti Mundra, Erin Donahue, Mikan Shelton, Paige Hurwitz, Nika King, and Olivia Charmaine Morris. You guys are the bomb.com, and I have no doubt that moving forward in this industry, if it's left up to y'all, we gonna see some inclusion, we gonna see some diversity, and we sure as hell gonna see some change. I am your moderator, Carla Renata, aka the Curvy Critic. Thank you so much for joining us here at The Grill for The Wrap, and check out the other panels that we have coming up right after this. Bye.
Thank you, everyone, for that empowering discussion at the roundtable. What a powerhouse group of women. Before we go on to our next roundtable, I wanted to take a moment to let you all know that we are bringing back in November our incredibly successful Power Women Summit. Last year, we brought together the most women ever in the history of entertainment and media, 2,000 women for an in real life event talking about pushing toward 50-50 gender equity and diversity in our industry. This year, we're holding the event virtually from November 17th to the 19th. There'll be speakers and panels and mentoring and performances. You'll definitely want to join us. We expect thousands of women to be able to join from all over the country and indeed all over the world. So tickets and information are available at wrapwomen.com. We really hope to see you there. And now, over to you, Sonari.
Thank you, Sharon. And welcome to everyone to the second portion of our Building Inclusion from Within Roundtable, using your platform for change. I'm Sonari Lunton. I'm the founder of Delight Media, and I'm excited to continue our discussion on industry inclusion with an amazing group of speakers. So let's bring them out. First up is Kaylin Allen, an award-nominated actor, producer, and television personality. Discovered by Ellen DeGeneres in 2018, Kaylin has catapulted into mainstream media, reaching millions of people worldwide across his social media platforms and through his content online. Welcome, Kaylin.
Well, hello. That was a wonderful introduction. Thank you.
Effie Brown is an award-winning film, television, and digital producer. She is the CEO of Game Changer Films, which launched in 2013. And its projects, which first focused on women filmmakers, now include projects by people of color, LGBTQ, and people with disabilities. Hello, Effie.
Hey, glad to be here.
J. Love Calderon is the managing partner of BWA Studios and is a co-founder of Inspired Justice, a social impact and creative agency supporting celebrities, influencers, and in Hollywood, and shifting the very toxic culture into a culture in which everyone can truly thrive. Welcome, J. Love.
Yeah,
I love that. William Catlett is an actor, writer, and director who most recently starred as Detective Jenkins in Barry Jenkins, and he penned the feature film Charm City Kings and Burton Freeman in Jordan Peele's Love Country for HBO. Welcome.
Woo! Yeah!
I'm here, baby.
And finally, we have actor and comedian Maz Jobrani. Most recently, he was seen in Taste the Nation opposite Padma Lakshmi. His stand-up special, Immigrant, is currently available on Netflix, and he also has 3 additional solo specials on Showtime. Welcome, Maz Jobrani. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is a great group of people to be with.
All right. I was thinking about this panel because you know, I talk about inclusion all the time. And one of the things that really has been getting to me, which is like, I want to like smash people over the head when I hear an executive say it. It's, I don't go to Effie first. It's pipeline. Like when people stop talking to me about pipeline, like it makes me, like there's so many, it's not about getting the folks in because there's like dozens and dozens, hundreds of talented people. Tell me, how do we get beyond pipeline?
How do we get, you know what? It's very, very difficult. Hire them. That's it. That's it. That's all you, that's the pipeline. That's it. It's very difficult. So I know it sounds, I you know, when people ask that, you know, they're making, it's like, it's such a big insurmountable thing. And I'm like, it's really quite simple. I've been Black and a woman all my life. I've been working in film for quite some time. I'm not the only person. There are talented and qualified women, people of color, LGBTQ, and people with disabilities. Like, we've been here. All you need to do is hire us. We don't need to, you know, anyway, that's all that I have to say to that. I don't want to overcomplicate it for people. Just hire us.
Anybody else want to come in?
It's nothing. Like, it's we already here.
Will, what Maz, you're about to speak?
Yeah, I was going to say one of the problems, I think, and I'm hoping it's getting better, but one of the problems has been people in those positions of power, in the hiring positions, because I think once we get people of color in those positions, they're the ones who, when you go and pitch a story or you tell them a story, they might relate to it or they might see the importance of it. And so we need to have more and more people that are in those executive positions, they're in the producer positions, the positions, as Effie was saying, to hire other people of color. Not that we need to depend on that, but they need to put other people of people of color and LGBTQ, et cetera, diverse backgrounds into decision-making positions.
Yep.
Well, you know, I was thinking of a moment that I had, and I guess I want someone to respond to this. I was talking to Tina Sinatra about something random. I interviewed her for a story about My Way, and we started talking about the light media, right? And then she goes, you know what? In my career, I have never had a project be greenlit unless there was someone on the opposite side of the table. And then she circled her face and said, who looks exactly like me? And I'm Frank Sinatra's daughter. Still my favorite line. Someone respond to that line. Like, how do you, if you're in the place, right, and say you're a Black woman or a person of color, how do you advocate for people on the outside? Because
I have to say, I'm picking up what you're putting down, and just really quickly, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I took over Game Changer Films. We're a financing company, development as well as production. And it became very clear that until we bet on us, nobody else really was going to. And the people that are greenlighting, we are actually able to greenlight. Like, we're only, and people, I am waiting for someone to come at us for this, but we're only focused on women, people of color, LGBTQ, and people with disabilities in front of and behind the scenes. Because that's where I personally feel that's where change is going to happen. And we're grateful and happy and ready to deploy the resources that we raised during this time of COVID. So everybody, high five. I think they're really right that you need to have people who actually understand, and they don't have to do catch up, right? When you're pitching your story of like, no, let me tell you about my community. Okay, wait, well, this is why it's important that, you know, you have to do all that because people already have that sort of shorthand and you can jump right to the story. That's all for me.
Yeah, I love that. And I was going to jump in to say the pipeline conversation also drives me insane. And so what we've done in Black Women Animate, which was founded by a brilliant Black woman, Taylor K. Shaw, is we do come in with a list of talented Black and brown folk and say, hey, well, look right here. Like, there's no problem with pipeline. I think the issue is that specifically white folks is like, they need to start to give up power, and they, including me, I'm a white woman. The power has to be shifted here. so that they don't think that they can continue to be making all the executive decisions on all things. The pipeline conversation is an excuse, and we just have to bust through that excuse so that that can shift, because until we do, the power structure will remain in place where the people making the decisions are white people, and we got to bust that open.
William?
I don't know. You know, I don't really ever look at pipeline or look at inclusion that way, you know, just because I'm a creative. So I never look at someone hiring me to work for them in that sort and to bring people up that way. I kind of just create what I want to see, and I go straight to consumer. You know, with the Academy, I've done that. Me and James Bland just came out another project, straight to consumer. I think the game has changed in a way that you can go directly to your audience versus the old way of, hey, please pick me, pick me, pick me, pick me. So my mindset doesn't even go into please include me because of the color of my skin or feel disenfranchised. I don't even allow my mind to think that way. As an artist, I want to be colorless. I want you to see the art and see the character. So I do understand that there are obstacles to cross, and there always will be. But I think when we focus on how can I partner with athlete, how can I partner with this person, how can I partner with that person, then we can all come up together, then I think that's a better step towards the future than to worry about changing powers that have been there for so long. You know, sometimes it's just time to just do something else in order to get your content out there. I mean, I remember being in China for the first time when I was working on the show Survivor, and a young kid touched my hand, and I said, "Ni hao, ma," and I turned my hand over, and it's black here, but it's white here. And he jumped back because they don't see black people.
Yeah.
And I realized is that athletes have made us worldwide. You know, so people want to see our stories. We just have to go to the Chinas, go to the Japans, go overseas, and you know, put that work out there. In my opinion.
Kaylin, and speaking of going directly to the audience, I mean, what do you think about that? I mean, you're talking directly to the audience, right?
Yes, I talk directly to the audience, but I think my position, especially within a brand that is already so huge, I think I have an advantage with being a personality, because when people hire me or when people book me, they are booking me. I am the product. So that gives me an advantage. So when I am on set, I can request a person of color to, you know, do my makeup or to be my groomer, or I can say if I need, you know, somebody to do a set for me, I can say, well, I want a black person to do it, you know? So I think because of that power that I have, I think that's the way that I look at it. Not necessarily like, oh, let me take these people that have been in charge for so long. It's more so like, how do I use my privilege and my power to bring in more people that look like me so that I don't have to feel uncomfortable or be the only black person in the room?
You know, that's really interesting you say that, because I was thinking of a friend of mine who's a photographer was mad that the principal photographer, like we were talking about Black Panther, and he was mad that the principal photographer wasn't a black person. I was like, always black people. And he's like, I don't care. It's like there was a time when Richard Pryor would go on a film set to say, where the Negroes at? And until I see some more, I'm going to be back in my trailer. And I recently had that moment myself where I said, look, I was the only black man in public radio, give or take. I mean, like, or I was the only black man in so many rooms, I can't even count them. I never want to do that again. Right. So, and surprisingly, with this project that I was working on, I love that not only did they bring a black man to work with me, he was like a black man from Detroit, a member of the Nation of Islam. I was like, oh, you see me. You see what I'm talking about. Like it was, and it ended up being one of the most rewarding experiences because he got me, he understood what I was, you know, how I worked, what all my inside references. I like to joke it wasn't because he was a black man. It was because he was a black man from Detroit, who was a member of the nation. So that's why he worked so well. Not Maz?
I think that, you know, what Will and Kaylin both just said is very empowering. So I think we all agree that we need to create our own stories. And similar also to what Effie was saying before, and J-Love and I were saying before about having these executives that can also greenlight things, it goes hand in hand, because I know as a stand-up comedian, stand-up comedy is kind of like music. You know, you put it out there, you do the live shows, and it's a great equalizer, because when people come to the shows, you're either funny or you're not funny. And there's been so many times that I've had a stand-up comedy show and I've had a white agent come and show up and see my people in the audience dying of laughter, and then they're understanding the jokes as well. And then after the show, they come up and they go, wow, that was funny, and people got it and they were laughing. And I go, yeah. For the longest time, I would go into these pitch rooms at networks and they would say, well, you know, Middle America, we don't know if they're going to get it or not get it. But these stories, they translate. I mean, Black Panther killed it in the cinemas because people liked it. You know, Crazy Rich Asians, people liked it, and it wasn't just white, Asian, black. It was everybody. So it's a combination of creating our own opportunities, but also, you know, there's a laziness on the executive sides, and I don't want to keep blaming executives, because I'll probably end up in a meeting one day and they'll be like, you know, you're bad mouthing you. But there's a laziness, because now you got the internet, you can go online and you can start searching people that you didn't know about that are people of color, and you go, who is this person? I saw Tiffany Haddish for years and years at the Laugh Factory being funny, and it took years until people go, oh, okay. You know, or take a pick. I mean, there's a lot of people of that. Joe Coy now, you know, he's big on net. People know him, but if you listen to his story, Netflix kept passing on his special until he went out and shot it himself. And then, oh, okay. So similarly, there needs to be a symbiosis of the two, creating the opportunities and execs stepping up a little bit.
Yeah. Both and, right? The both and. Yes.
No, J-Love, continue.
I just think it's what we're all talking about. I think we do have to talk about access to capital, and people of color deserve access to real money to create. And so I think we have to push from the outside in and from the inside out, while we are also, you know, making the road by walking and creating our own entities, businesses, nonprofits that can serve the vision of Black people and people of color. So I really believe in both and, not an either or.
No, and I just want to just really quickly, high five, J-Love. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. Because here's the thing that I think I keep pointing out. This is not show charity. This is show business. Okay? Yeah. This is about money and business, and diversity and inclusion is not a charity when people are talking about the labs and the things. This is a business, and we are good business. And I think, and just sort of riffing off of what you cats were saying, I love, and I want to hear more about going direct to consumer, because it's a new world order. Theatrical, God bless it. You know what I mean? Like, sorry, Booby, the days are a little numbered. COVID was already, you know, was sort of the nail, but like, it's a streamer world right now. It's all about access to capital. It's all about who gets to tell whose story. Because here's the thing, and I don't want to go too hard, but if you watch those movies, that maybe one might have won the Academy Award last year or something like that, you know? Like, you got to be like, it might have been about something that was inclusive and diverse, right? But like, who actually was the director? Who was the producer? Who were the people that were going to profit off of it? Until we, women, people of color, LGBTQ, people with disabilities, until we're able to actually be able to profit from it and be able to use that for legacy and foundation, that's where the real change comes. I mean, I'm sure, when Will was talking about, I'm talking about traveling, you know, and how athletes have sort of opened the door for, you know, for the other, but so with music, right? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, wherever, I go all over Morocco, I've been all over the place, Scandinavia, like, they know our music, you know, they know us, they want to hear our stories, right? We just have to be able to be the ones to tell it and to be able to make that money so that we can tell more. Now,
with excellence.
Well, Effie, sorry. sorry, J-Love, go ahead.
Just to tell it with excellence, which also supports with resources, right?
100%. We're tired of making meals out of crumbs. Like how many, and I'll go back to like, I don't know, because I just know that you're a content creator, right? And so are you. Like you guys are content creators. How many times have we had to make a meal out of crumbs? How many times that we're like, well, shit, they gave us $1 million. We're gonna be grateful for that $1 million. But somebody across the street, you're like, he has less talent than me, less experience than me. And you got $5 million? What? But our shit comes off popping, right? You know what I mean? And then they continue to give us crumbs instead of like, can't we grab? They're like, now you're at 1.5.
Well, can I jump in about I was thinking about numbers or facts. Like, so I'm an economics correspondent who occasionally goes into Hollywood. And so when I'm talking to people, I'm like, I know what I'm talking about. And so I often have like facts at display, to the ready, and they still don't get heard. So for instance, let's use the example of, we talk about theatrical, like Black women read, we don't know if they read more books. I'm going to take that back. They buy more books than everybody else.
I say we read.
Yeah, I'm not going to go. Yeah, they buy more books. They vote more. They go to church more, and they are more interested in independent travel than any other ethnic group. Oh, and who do you think is buying Q7? And who is over-indexed on cleaning products and luxury SUVs and all these things? So I find myself almost having to take a second, be like, really? Black women vote than everybody else? My favorite one, but I wonder about this like moment of having to educate folks, which can be tiresome, right? And I'll give you my example, and someone rip off of this, is that I was talking to someone, and this was around when Toni Morrison passed away, and an executive said, oh, it's so good that Oprah introduced so many Black women to literature. Oh. And I was like, I literally almost passed out. But that is literally what we're up against in terms of 42% of the world speaks English, and they look more like the people on this call than a group of executives in Hollywood. How do you help the executives understand the business case for that half the globe speaks English and they don't look like Connecticut?
I feel like I'm talking too much. Somebody else take this one. I'll end it.
Well, I think Effie, you have more of the experience of it about being an exec. So
I'm a producer. This is my first time taking like a straight job. Actually, and I'm a 51% owner of the company, which is also why when I'm talking about leverage and investment, like and I know it sounds great, but like it's real. Like I had just to really quickly, like I'm 48 years old, and I had this moment where I was like, I've produced over 28 films, made over $100 million for other people. And I'm like, have I paid off my house that I've had for 18 years? No. Like, you know what I mean? Like, am I struggling sometimes to figure out how to pay my car lease? Yeah. Like, these are things. And so I'm practicing what I preach of being like, we need to have ownership because we will forever be used as a tool. And as Audre Lorde was like, the master's tools will never destroy the master's house. So like, stop being a tool. Excuse my language.
So how do you get the tool? How do you get the tool to destroy the house? That's the question. What are the ways?
And I want to hear it, and I'm just going to go back. I think that and I don't mean to pivot from myself because I love to talk, but I think what Will was talking about before was talking about a decolonization of the mind. Right? When he was talking about, I don't see myself that way. I don't let myself be seen that way. I don't act that way. So when I make my art, this is how I feel. And I'm like, good for you, young man. Because that's where we need to go. And I think there's a real point of being like, it's like, and I'm a nerd, right? And I love sci-fi, but I always go back to the Matrix and with the Oracle and to be like, there is no spoon. Right? You know what I mean? And I'm like, you know what? I'm playing this game in this system. But if I stop recognizing it, if I stop giving you power over it and I move my own way, I think things change. And that became with resources as well. And I know that, and I went to people to raise this money, and I got great founders and great backers because I spoke the truth that we're speaking right now. And they're like, yeah, you're right. Let's bet on us. And what's great about, is like there's people, our investors are, we're looking for our investors to be as diverse as the people that we're serving. So anyway, I want to shove this out. I'm like, Will, what do you think? Stop being so quiet.
Oh,
hey, Lynn.
I'm just listening because my thoughts are so different than most. I
love it. Yeah.
That's what we want to hear. We want to hear different. You
know what I mean? It's just, to me, there's nothing outside of you. Everything is within inside of you. And being an actor and coming to California, not something that I wanted to do. It's something I kind of fell into. But I was in a rat race. Going to this audition, pick me, go to this casting director, go to this. I said, what are you doing, man?
Yeah.
You're running around. And I kept having a recurring dream. I was running, but I had cement in my feet. I was always running fast, but I couldn't get to top speed. And I realized I was chasing something instead of building something. So when I stopped chasing and started building, then everything opened up for me. Now I can't stop working because I don't worry about it. I don't think about it. I just say, I know that I'm going to be provided for. And if it's not there, then I must create it. And like my brother was saying, the TV personality, when you on set and you see people that don't look like you, it is your duty to say, hey, let's change the environment. Let's make sure that we got, people are not just continue to hire their friends. Let's get some other people involved. If you have the voice to speak up, to be able to do that, that is more honorable because you're putting the ladder down so somebody can climb up. And if that is the thought process, then things begin to change and not seeing the execs as enemies. You're trying to educate them on saying, hey, maybe you grew up in the 40s and the 50s, but now we're in 2020 and we want to see more representation. It's like you look at contracts. You would have it if you worked for NBC back in the day, you was the NBC guy. Nowadays, no one cares if you're on NBC and on Netflix and on Hulu. The viewer doesn't care anymore. They just want to see the art. So that even in contracts, those should reflect change. I shouldn't have to only allowed to do 3 episodes on another show if I'm a series regular on this show. The world has changed. You must even open the contracts and say, hey, give the people what they want.
My aunt always says, I'll let you talk, Kaylin. My aunt always says the victory is yours already. That with some Bible stuff, Black women, they do other shirts. The victory is yours already before you even walked into the room, right? So, Kaylin, pick up from where Will left off.
Yeah, I was going to say that I love Will's ideology about the colorlessness of it all. However, I do feel as for me, it can actually be dangerous to be colorless. And the reason why I say that is because I have an audience that is majority white, right? And my direct to consumer is not so much like, here's the content, here you go. There's a personal connection. And if I start to act colorless, they start to treat me colorless, and I don't think that's realistic. And so I think I always try to strive to push my Blackness to the forefront because I know that I have an access to a group of people that usually aren't around people that look like me. And I use that as an opportunity to educate and to inform people and to show them new things and stuff like that, And so I think it all starts to get very tricky because you have to think of, well, who is your consumer? It's not so much just like, well, let's just make the content and give it to the consumer. You have to ask, who is the person that is buying this? And I think when you talk about executives and when you talk about Hollywood in general, I think that executives don't necessarily care about the race of it all, but they care about the money. Exactly. And I think what happens is that executives get scared to bet that America is not still racist, that they are going to accept all these Black bodies on one show, I think the one station that seems to be getting it is like HBO, but like aside from there, it gets real murky.
Well, what, Kaylin, when I think about that, I think about myself, right? I cover the auto industry. And So I, as a reporter, I see what the people buy the thing, what the people, sorry, let's wait for whoever responds. Brother's gotta work. Right.
He's getting a call from an executive right now.
Yeah, exactly.
I just want to answer my boy Kalen's question. He's not wrong what he's saying because he knows his audience. I'm not saying colorless of not knowing your audience. You must know your audience and who you're dictating your voice to. But I'm also saying not to have blocks in our minds that keep us from moving forward based on our color. It's like we keep saying black excellence, black excellence. I'm black. I've been excellent. I don't want to hear black excellence anymore because I've been excellent. So why we keep sharing that narrative? So I believe when we share the narrative differently, then like anything, you know, commercials show you the same thing over and over and over again to program your mind. We have to think about reprogramming people so they can have a relationship with black people. You know what I'm saying?
Well, what I was thinking about just a thing that I found out in the business world, which is the #1 brand for car brand for African Americans, Asians, and Latinos in America.
Cadillac.
No. Black folks used to drive. No. That's not funny. I mean, it's funny but it's true. But Cadillac used to be the #1 brand for African Americans, but General Motors got confused about who bought their cars, right? And what they were, and they started running away from that group. What I find interesting is when you talk about freight executives, the facts point out that Toyota is the most diverse of the companies. It has a specific marketing agency for each of those groups, right? So it gets to be the #1 brand because it decided that it was going to be the #1 brand, right? So I look at these examples for me in the business world. General Motors knows who's buying cars. 80% of 80% of car decisions are made by women, et cetera, et cetera. Like, we know these things. This is the thing that makes me nuts, is that we know that Roots was the most popular miniseries in the history of miniseries. We know that Shaka Zulu was the most popular miniseries on the planet. Like, why do we keep having to, like, how do you get these people to understand what we know to be true? Like, we know that Black people are excellent. Maz, how do we get them to understand?
Listen, that goes back to that thing of having people in positions of decision-making and power from these backgrounds there. So I agree with Will and with Kalen about, look, we got into this. Let's take color out. You're in this world because you wanted to act. You're in this world because you wanted to create. So whether you're creating for your YouTube channel or you're creating for HBO or you're creating for whatever, just create. Do it. Get up, shoot something, film it, put it out there, keep going. Because if you don't, as Will was saying earlier, you're going to be sitting around waiting for auditions to come along, and you're an actor, but you're only acting once a month for 2 minutes at an audition, and you're not acting. So create your own opportunities. However, on the bigger picture, as you were saying, once you have people that understand these stories, or at least are open to it in the bigger, like, network world. Like, I recently heard regarding the TV show Rami Youssef. On Hulu. So the I think it was the president of Hulu or whatever, one of the decision makers, he said if it were just purely numbers, we wouldn't have necessarily given Rami a second season. But Rami is an amazing show, and I love Rami as a friend of mine. I watched the first season, I was blown away. I watched the second season, I was blown away. But if it were pure numbers, they would not have necessarily brought back season 2. However, they saw the quality of it. They gave this young Muslim Egyptian kid a shot, and he knocked it out of the park. So basically, like, I'm seeing, like, I started doing acting and comedy 22 years ago. Back when I started, there was like 3 of us, at every audition, and there was all terrorist parts. Yeah. And flash forward 22 years later, and you've got all kinds. You got Hassan Minhaj, you got Mindy Kaling, you got Aziz Ansari, you got Rami Youssef, you got people coming through that are getting the shot. Now, it takes some person in an executive position on the big, on the HBOs, the Hulus, and Netflixes to go, you know what? I want to hear this because I think there's something here. So again, it goes hand in hand, but that doesn't mean sit and wait for someone to tap you on the shoulder. Get to work, make your product, put it out there, and show them, because when a Black Panther comes out, every studio goes, where's our Black Panther? When Crazy Rich Asians happens, where's our Crazy Rich Asians? Bruce Lee was playing the sidekick in America. He had to go to Hong Kong to kill it in his movies to come back and then be a star. So this has been going on for a long time because, again, these people that are in the position of power that aren't open-minded to seeing other stories that might be, they're focused on their day-to-day and they think, oh, it's a movie about a cop. Well, then, okay, so then Brad Pitt should be the cop and the love interest should be whoever, white, let's go. But you go, no, let's change it up a little bit. The story of Lethal Weapon and how I was reading this about casting. The casting director had to suggest Danny Glover because it was written and the director thought, oh, two white guys. And the casting director was like, no, let's try Danny Glover. And he kills it. So just make your own stuff. And at the same time, executives and people that are hiring, you need diversity in the decision-making room, or else we're just gonna be watching our own stuff.
Right. Yes, I agree with that.
I think the best thing that we can do for those who, will view this is that we need more ethics. We need more EC. We need more of the people that's on here because you got to watch both sides. You got to create the content, but you also need to push people up that have the money to make the decision so that we can bridge the gap. Just like my sister J Love was saying, we got to bridge the gap, in order for us to rise as one whole ship. And that starts within first, because you have to have that mindset. We have to support that. We have to support that. We have to support that. We have to support Miles. We have to support my brother. We have to do that in a way for it can rise up. If not, we're going to constantly be telling the same story in 2025.
I tell you, I look at people, Black folks with podcasts who have white producers. I'm like, do you think that this brother, do you think that he's going to understand your story or going to be able to talk to your people? I mean, we don't exist in the world, but what do you say to that person? Maz was saying, just go make it, but we know that Black folks make it. We know that people of color are making content. Black women self-publish their books, their theater, there's all of this stuff. But I'm wondering about when you are sitting across, when you have the moment to sit across from an executive, how do you make a difference? Is it focusing on the audience? Is it focusing on, is it knowing your audience? Is it knowing the workers? J Love?
Yeah, I'd love to jump in here. This conversation is so good. I get an opportunity to talk to executives because, especially now with the uprising, white people are listening differently. And of course, white people should have been listening a long time ago, but we are here now. And when I sit across from executives who are looking for training and development, what I speak to is their heart. And I do believe that through the heart, we can change the mind and then we can change the behavior, which I feel like is a little bit aligned with what Will's talking about. My assessment is that white people are scared. White people in power don't know what's happening. They're scared. They don't want to lose their jobs. And they don't have the answers because due to white privilege, they haven't had to know the answers. They've been able to get through without knowing the answers. And now something is very different. So I truly do believe you get in through the heart and then we can move things through, because once culture shifts, then policy can shift. I think for me, that's the way in is the heart. Go heart, mind, policy, which changes behavior.
Yeah, I was thinking about something that's also interesting, but about the top level. I wonder about those folks that are, like when we think about the two places, entering and getting to the top. And I just saw a study that showed that people who've been working at the company, so when you choose a CEO who comes from within, that CEO tends to be way more successful than getting someone from the outside. So I think, so there's usually someone in your pool, if you're an executive, who is able to, a person of color, like look for the person of color nearby. Like there's a likelihood that they can take over the role. All right, so we got, in our time, we got about a few minutes left. I'm gonna ask us, each of us to, I'm gonna start with me, and I'm gonna go around, and I'm gonna, begin with Effie, I'm gonna end with her, and give 2 pieces of advice for the executives who are scared, and for the people of color who are trying to find their way in. So I would say to executives, actually look at the numbers. 44% of the globe speaks English, and they look like this panel. And when hiring, you should just look at the resumes. Like just start there. Look at all the resumes. Like those are 2. Remember that the audience is vast and diverse. William, you're up next. What 2 pieces of advice would you give to people entering and folks at the top who are a bit scared?
I would say to the people that are entering in, no one's holding your opportunity. You're holding it. So just create relentlessness and be relentless in creating, and the door will open for you. And what I would say to an executive is just hang out with more people. You know what I'm saying? Hang out with more brothers, hang out with more sisters, and you will
find fun.
I mean, those who don't, I'm not saying that they do. I can't generalize everybody. But you will find out that you have more in common than you do not have in common. And I'll be honest with you, yeah, you can have the resumes there, but people hire who they like. It's not always about the most talented in the room. People want to work with good people, and good people don't always look like you. You know what I mean? So just be able to just venture out, explore the world, explore different folks. You know what I mean? And I think as we continue to do that, we'll see a whole different world for the next generation.
That's some life advice, right? J-Love, you're up.
Yes. So to the executives, what side of history do you want to be on? And to coming up, what you believe you create. So stay in your highest consciousness. And if you are a creator, create.
You should like this.
For those who are joining us, before this conversation began, J-Love reminded us that she is a white lady. To our joy. Maz, what 2 pieces of advice?
To executives, I would say don't be lazy. If you're looking for talent, or if you're on YouTube, try someone doesn't look like you. Find somebody that doesn't look like you. Go in to check out their material, check out their podcast, check out their concert, check out whatever they got. You're gonna find a lot of talent out there that you didn't know existed. And on the people coming into the business, there's no reason not to create. When I started 22 years ago, you couldn't make a video on your phone. You had to go get a camera, and somebody knew how to work it, and then they get a tape, and you go to a place, you have to give them the VHS tape and have them dub it into another tape. You just make it on your camera, and you hit a button, and you're a star. I mean, maybe for 4 people, but it's got to start somewhere.
Kaylin, what you got for the folks?
My advice for the executive is to definitely look at the material, look at the numbers, look at the receipts, and hire people of color in decision-making positions and make sure that they are given a voice in the room and at the table. For someone that is up and coming, my advice is for you to build a brand and build a platform that can sustain itself without the approval of somebody else. Create something that can stand on its own, because if you do that, then it will be able to last forever. If you create something that is dependent on somebody else giving you a yes or a no, baby, that ain't the way to go.
Amen. And finally, Effie, let's take us home.
And this is, I'll be quick-ish. Everything that everyone has said, I will high five. For the person that is coming in, I would say you need to know your what and your why. What you want to do and why you want to do it. And sometimes that may change as you get older, but you need to be very clear about that, because life is going to happen on life's terms. Unfair things are going to happen. Opportunities are going to pass you by. Obstacles are going to get in your way. And you got to be able to be strong in your what and your why in order to make it. That has always been a foundation for me. It's worked for me. I feel it could work for you. For the executives, this is what I want to do. Oh, it's with love in my heart, as I like to say, with love in my heart, I want you to take a deep breath. And I want you to realize that change is upon us. Whether we like it or not, it is happening. We cannot stop it. It is inevitable. And the world is no longer domestic and small. The world is global. There's a lot of people out there. And I also want to let the executives know that the world is bigger than just black and white. There's a lot of different people out there besides just the two of us. And I would encourage you to look at their stories, their communities, and to be able to see it as a wider platform. Maybe stop looking so narrow here domestically and start spreading out and seeing what we can all really be about. That's a brief too, because change is upon us.
Yeah, and you don't want to be the, I always joke with folks, you don't want to be the Spencer Tracy in your movie, right? You know, right? You don't want to be that, you know, like, that's what I always think about it. It's like, whenever I'm like, these darn kids, I'm like, oh, exactly. I don't want to be the Archie Bunker in my own movie, and right? I don't.
Archie Bunker, yeah, but it's happening. That's the thing, it's happening. It's happening. But the other thing I want to say is that, like, stop chasing and start building. I'm just going to let you know, Will, I may not ever see you again, but I'm going to use that. And that's going to be, I'm going to totally take that and be like, and when you see me on another panel and I'm doing it, yeah.
It's all yours.
All right. Thank you, everybody. This is great. It was great fun to meet you all. We just heard from Effie Brown. Effie Brown is with Game Changer Films. She's the CEO. J. Love Calderon is an activist, and she's the co-founder of Inspire Justice and the managing partner of BWA Studios. William Catlett is an actor. He's in Charm City Kings and Lovecraft Country. Masro Brani, he is everywhere. He is an actor and he's a comedian. And Kaylin Allen is a TV personality and he makes his own content. I'm Sonari Glinton. I'm the CEO of Delight Media, and I'm the host of the podcast Bring Back Bronco, which you can get back wherever you listen to your podcast. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Pleasure being here.